code red. Send the officers, send the firefighters. Code red is typically used in dispatching when there's a fire or an emergency. Code red, hurry, respond. There's a fire to put out, there's an emergency. I use the same logic when creating my own version of code red. My code red is a social construct that I conceptualized in 2020. As an educator and scholar, one of my main philosophies is to take the learner, the audience, on a journey to examine social phenomena, learn everything there is to learn about it, and disrupt the systems or culture that impede on Black and brown people and women. Code Red focuses on social fires. Racism is an example of a social fire that desperately needs to be put out. So to be an agent of change, or if you're wondering how to assist in putting out the fire, Code Red is a model that helps guide that process. There's 3 steps to Code Red, 3 points. R, reflect. E, engage. And D, my favorite, is for disrupt. Reflect, engage, disrupt. Code red, there's a fire to put out. Today, I want to attempt to code red something that's so prevalent in our community. That is to dismiss or not take care of or silencing childhood sexual abuse. It's so important in art. So we want to code red this John. I'm from Philly, so I'm gonna say John. John is a noun. It's whatever you want it to be. In this context, the noun is the cultural fire. The first step in Code Red is to reflect. R, reflect. The process of reflection is important because it's the cognitive and interpersonal processing part of Code Red. Some questions to ask yourself: where do I find myself as an advocate for survivors of childhood sexual abuse? Am I a victim of childhood sexual abuse myself? If so, how have I dealt with my own experiences? Am I on the outside of this? Am I an advocate? How have I supported others or silenced them when I've heard of situations? How often does this happen in my community, my circle? Reflection is important because it gives you time to get real about your positionality. Let's be real. Many people will hear this talk and shun it. When I share just an ounce of my own experience publicly, many relatives called me and shunned me, and it hurt. So much so that I regretted sharing it. Many people, we understand this. 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 13 boys experience childhood sexual abuse. 91% of them are abused by someone they know. And approximately 86% of that goes underreported. So what does that say? Childhood sexual abuse is happening at greater rates than these statistics show. It means that everyone in this room, according to these stats, have experienced childhood sexual abuse either directly or indirectly. Meaning that we've either experienced it ourselves or know someone who has. So we want to be able to reflect, getting real about your positionality, being able to reflect on where you are. How have I participated in silencing or supporting people? Sometimes we end up silencing people unintentionally, but we have to be able to get real about that. To be able to say, are we adding to? Are we sustaining? Or are we putting out the fire? This is a fire hose, y'all, right? Are we putting out the fire of any social injustice? Where do we stand? The second part of Code Red is E, engage. engagement is important because this is where you learn about everything that's associated with the fire. For this particular fire, we get to understand the importance because you get to understand the depth of its psychological impact, right? Note, children do not typically share their experiences at the time that they are happening. I was abused at age 6. 6 years old, being awakened, being touched, and my drawers being pulled down. It kept on going until I was 14 years old. I didn't tell the first person until I was 16, and that was just another pair. The next person I told was 20 years old, and the person after that wasn't until I was past 30. Children are often told not to tell, but at the same time, they are trying to make sense of what happened to them, while simultaneously trying to hold their worlds and keep them as normal as possible by suppressing their emotions and their experiences. Again, this leads to long-term PTSD and depression. It also impacts their relationships on others as they age. So again, it is most important, this engagement part, to understand the psychological impact of childhood sexual abuse, how people experience long-term PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, how people deal with doubt, self-harm, including suicide, and self-blame, erratic or sudden change in behavior, and drug use. The attained knowledge should point you to a few important questions. Do I want my family and friends who've experienced this, dealing with this, alone? Do I want, or should I allow myself to protect my own discomfort or own ignored trauma? Is that more important than giving the freedom to someone that's seeking it? Do I want others living like this? Because listen, this topic ain't easy. But that's the whole point of Code Red. Fires literally destroy. Them Johns are all consuming. And if we don't attend to them, we allow it to continue to impact our community in negative ways for generation after generation. The people who abused me were abused themselves. They did what was done to them, what they thought was normal. When does it stop? When does it end? The final step in Code Red allows us to come together as a community, right? And figure out a way to cultivate a culture that allows victims to come forward with their stories. Now, it would be really good if, we could just end childhood sexual abuse altogether, right? But that's a next Code Red talk. One of the first ways that we can do is talking, right? Code Red disruption is the accumulation of reflection and a continuation of engaging. It's not just talking to the victims and the children, but talking to the adults, right? Disrupting, we're breaking down the systems. It's telling people, talking to them, how did you learn about your positionality? Tell them, share with them the knowledge that you gained about the psychological depth impacts of childhood sexual abuse, right? And most importantly, it's addressing the abusers. Come on, let's talk about it, y'all. Y'all know who some of them are. But yet, you wait till something big happens and is in the news for you to say, oh, I knew that. Address the abuser no matter how hard it is. Remember what the victims are carrying. Addressing the abuser is always worth whatever you fear you'll lose. Addressing the abuser and holding them accountable is always worth whatever you fear you will lose. Another way of disrupting this culture is by providing safe spaces for your kids, even grown kids, to talk about anything, right? The openness about anything transfers to the openness to talk about hard topics. When children feel safe and protected, they are more willing to open up about hard things, their experiences in which they are ashamed of or don't make too much sense. Being a parent is borderline ghetto, right? But being a parent is definitely tough, especially when it comes to having hard conversations like this. So little random reminders like, I believe you if you ever have something to talk to me about, goes a long way in helping someone feel safe. Little random, I believe you, goes a long way with helping someone feel safe. Another way of disrupting this fire is by destigmatizing the victims of childhood sexual abuse. How many people, raise your hands, how many people in here go to church or grew up in church or any religious organization? How many people in here? All right, raise your hands high. All right, cool. We got a good number of people. All right, put your hands down. I am an educator. If you, all right, so now put your hands, how many of y'all at these religious organizations, all right, spoke about how to deal with childhood sexual abuse in ways more than just prayer or listening to worship music? Raise your hands high. Oh, I see one person. The power that religious organizations have in our community is great. We can't deny that. People go to these worship centers to feel empowered, to feel free. Now come and imagine with me. Imagine that at these religious organizations that families and individuals are learning how to become better advocates for people that experience childhood sexual abuse. Imagine that while at these religious organizations that families and individuals are learning how to cope with their experiences and to heal in ways that are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healing on this side of life. Imagine what would happen if we came together. Imagine if we got to the point where we are destigmatizing and it becomes normal to talk about this openly. That not only are we now being able to love our loved ones, but now even strangers can come to us and we know how to love on them. One of the final things, Fidel Castro, Cuba, had one of the lowest literacy rates. But under his reign, his power, the literacy rate skyrocketed to one of the highest in the world, and it has maintained that for decades. The main philosophy behind their literacy campaign is this, paraphrase: if one of us cannot read, then it's our responsibility to teach them. When communities rally to care for the least of these, or people that are impacted by social factors like childhood sexual abuse, the outcome is great. When we buy into the idea as a community to code-red childhood sexual abuse, we can have hope that one day no person has to feel burdened by their experience alone. That here in the Virgin Islands and in the United States of America, no one goes through their life not being able to have a safe person to talk to and tell their experience. That the basic human decency of taking children and people's experience about childhood sexual abuse is normal. Imagine how peaceful it is to be heard. I was 33 years old when I told a family member what happened to me. This was during a time when my relatives read just an ounce of my experience that I shared online, and much backlash and drama followed. And all the chaos of them emphasizing how much it made the family look and who did it and where it happened, I felt silenced and dismissed, broken, painfully hurt. So much shame. This particular family member, the first thing that they said to me was, "I believe you." That brought so much tears to my eyes and so much relief. So here we are. Code red. Reflect, engage, disrupt. This is how we code red childhood sexual abuse by first, reflecting on your positionality. Where do you stand in your advocacy? Are you adding, sustaining, or putting out the fire? And then it continues with engage, learning more about the impacts, learning about what signs to look for. And then it goes on to disrupting with a culture, a positionality, an attitude, of one that is very aggressive, that starts with the idea and stance of, "I believe you." Thank you.